In a free society, men choose their ideas. They compete against each other, and the best idea rises to the top. This is so fundamental to the way that most Americans and Westerners think that to question it is basically heresy. It's hard for us to really think of any other way ideas could be proven true or be selected and carried forward into the future. We are enlightened people who use truth and reason and science to determine the validity of the claims set before us, and then we forge our own path. This concept, known as the marketplace of ideas, is a favorite of conservatives and libertarians. Conservatives and libertarians love free markets, and so the marketplace of ideas makes perfect sense to them. The great ideas will rise to the top, they will outcompete others, and they will be the ones adopted by society. They will be the ones that govern our behavior. But despite having this marketplace of ideas, for some reason, the conservatives and the libertarians keep losing. Somehow, it always seems like the left is winning the debate. It feels like they are winning in the marketplace of ideas. It doesn't seem to matter that a large number of the population often disagrees with them, and it also doesn't seem to matter that those ideas often prove extremely ruinous to culture and society. Why is it that conservatives and libertarians can't win at their favorite game? Why do they seem destined to lose at a game that is played by their favorite rule set? Is it really that left-wing ideas are just that much better? Is it that the right truly has no good ideas and the left is always offering the best ideas up to the people? As we watch our society driven by left-wing ideals unravel in front of our eyes, it's hard to draw that conclusion. So what explains this constant shifting to the left? What explains this constant victory by the left in the marketplace of ideas, even when those ideas seem extremely costly and ineffective? Curtis Yarvin, aka Mencius Moldbug, recently broke down some of the fundamental problems with our conception of the marketplace of ideas in a way that I think will help us understand why this concept doesn't really map onto the reality that we experience today. Yarvin explains that the marketplace of ideas is, of course, a relatively recent invention. Every culture needs a basic agreed-upon source of truth. It's impossible for any group of human beings to build something more complex, more important, until they can at least agree on where truth comes from and what it might be. For most of human history, truth came from those in charge. It came from the hierarchy. It came from those that ruled. Those in charge use force to secure their sovereignty. And then the institutions that they put in place disseminated the truth to the people that they ruled over. In our more modern liberal democratic model, the people are seen as the source of the truth, and the people are seen as the source of sovereignty. The decisions on truth tend not to be directly made by people who we think of as rulers, the presidents, the Congress, even the chief justices of the Supreme Court. In modern liberal democracies, the apparatus for determining truth is placed outside of the formal government structure. Truth is instead determined by a consensus of our media, education, entertainment, and bureaucratic apparatus. A concept that you're probably familiar with by now if you've been watching my channel for a while, the cathedral. By placing the official truth-making apparatus outside the realm of formal power, democracies have played a neat trick. They've convinced people that they are themselves actually more powerful, that they themselves are actually determining what the truth is. They believe that they are the ones who are actually in charge of the ideas that they adopt. In a recent podcast appearance, Yarvin explains that the marketplace of ideas feeds the human desire to rule themselves and feel important and powerful, but without actually giving the individual any true power, any true self-determination. The whole podcast appearance is well worth listening to, and I'll include a link to the full podcast in the description below this video.
The principle that sovereignty, like energy, is conserved, that there's always someone in power, has never really been violated. And it's very hard to violate that. So here are these systems. Here's this system. It's very attractive to imagine this perpetual motion device where you can have something that is coherent, that is orderly, but that is not governed. that where no one is ruling, because one of the things that does is it really appeals to this sense in people that to not be ruled is the first step toward ruling. So, Hobbes writes about, no one really wants the desolate freedom of the wild ass. What they mean when they say they want freedom is they want basically power. They may mean power over themselves or their own communities, but they're always asking for power. And so to overthrow another power or to have no power above you is a very, very good feeling. It really feels good to your kind of inner chimpanzee because it shows that you're like a chimpanzee on the rise, right? So this idea of being governed by a system which does not have to be trusted rather than people who you have to place your faith in and obey and follow is very, very attractive. So this accounts for a lot of the attraction of the model of the marketplace of ideas.
Yarvin points out that our deep-seated desire to rule ourselves, to have no one over us, has actually made us, ironically, far less free as human beings. No one wants to submit. No one wants to obey. No one wants to serve. Even when the master is greater. Even when the master is wiser. Even if the ruler could greatly improve our lives if we all worked together towards his vision, still we would rather be free and miserable than ruled and happy. By feeding us the illusion that we create our own truth, and that our ideas have come to us through a scientific and rational process, untainted by the authority of anyone else, liberal democracies have successfully been able to move the decision-making apparatus outside the formal area of power. Because the cathedral is able to hold the marketplace of ideas outside of formal government power, it's been able to convince the majority of people to believe that they are consensually participating in a game which it always had rigged from the very beginning. Moldbug believes that this is actually a step down from the classical understanding of power and truth, because it creates what he calls an atheistic theocracy.
In European civilization, one of the things that was so dynamic for, a millennium and a half easily was this basically dual structure of the political structure of emperors and kings and the intellectual structure of the Catholic Church, or whatever church they replaced it with. And because these powers had a sort of tension against each other, and that tension never ever went away, in a way they kept each other honest. And so when you got a system, your sort of alternatives to that system were basically one of two things. It was Caesaropapism, which is a technical term meaning the emperor is also the pope. That was, that basically wound up as essentially the Russian system of government, which, it has its virtues. Frankly, I'll take that any day over what we have now. And then what we have now is basically theocracy. Theocracy is the rule of the saints. It's inherently decentralized. Or it becomes decentralized very, very easily. And decentralized theocracy, basically what we have now is essentially a decentralized atheistic theocracy. And that's a system of government that the decentralization is very much like a metastatic cancer. It's actually not good that it's decentralized because there isn't any one place that you can say, oh, let's get rid of the New York Times and we'll be rid of the system. No, it's all over the body. You need chemo or immunotherapy.
You see, it turns out that nothing ever actually changed. Those elites in power still decide what the truth will be. The consensus will still be determined by the rulers, but by informalizing the mechanism by which truth is decided, by placing this power in the marketplace of ideas, the current regime has actually convinced the vast majority of its subjects to join a cult of power, where they get to pretend that they have influence in exchange for giving real power to those that rule over the kingdom. The marketplace of ideas ends up actually absorbing a large amount of our religious and intellectual energy as we spend our time fighting pointless battles in the Colosseum of ideas for the amusement of the elites. We attack the positions of our fellow citizens as if they had any real power, which of course They don't. Just as we, no matter how valuable our ideas may be, have no real impact until we have true power. The debate, the battle in the marketplace of ideas is simply a play. It's a fiction. It in no way actually determines the outcome for those who rule the civilization. But we all play our parts. We participate in this fiction that the actions we're taking and the battle of ideas that we're engaging in will make a difference. And this, of course, only helps to lend credibility to the regime which stakes its power on this very myth. You can only look like a victor if there's a battle. It doesn't matter if the battle's outcome is already predetermined, you still need the battle to take place in order to look victorious. The left will win in the marketplace of ideas every single time because the game is rigged. But as long as conservatives and libertarians keep stepping up and playing the game, it keeps feeding the illusion that there is a legitimate struggle for power going on, that there's a legitimate battle of ideas occurring. Yarvin ends by pointing out a very simple truth. It really doesn't matter if you design the perfect system if you don't have power. You can sit there and debate the perfect system forever, but until you actually have the power to enact any changes, it really doesn't matter what system you're exploring in theory. Those looking for real change should not be looking to debate the perfect system with their fellow man in an infinite struggle that will never actually produce something. They should be looking for the opportunities to gain the power necessary to create that change. And until they do that, everything else is just feeding the old system. The marketplace of ideas isn't a solution, it's a trap. This obviously doesn't mean that we abandon reason. This obviously doesn't mean that we stop trying to think through the best way to do things. What it means is we stop pretending that the way these things get implemented is through force of argument. What we stop pretending is that this myth that the best ideas will be vetted and rise to the top and naturally implemented by free men is something that has actually ever reflected the reality that goes on in any given country. Thanks for listening, guys. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit like. If you want to follow me on Twitter, the information is down in the description below. If you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do that now. And as always, if you like these ideas and you want to share them out, please do so. It really helps the channel. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.